Speaker Mike Johnson told reporters he is strongly against the House Ethics Committee releasing its report on the investigation into accusations Matt Gaetz engaged in sexual misconduct and illicit drug use.
In an urgent follow-up to a video that we did earlier today, as well as yet another exhausting post-election breaking news bombshell, Republican Speaker Mike Johnson has publicly told reporters that he intends to bury the House Ethics Committee's final report about their investigation into Matt Gaetz, and that he also intends to prevent the report from being shared with the Senate Judiciary Committee, which would be responsible for investigating and confirming Gaetz to the position of Attorney General. The corruption is that bad, folks. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, I don't know what to say. This is not surprising at all, but it is so egregious and so blatant. Trump hasn't even been confirmed as inaugurated as president of the United States. And we're months away from not only that, but any potential investigation and confirmation of Matt Gaetz as Attorney General. And already Mike Johnson feels so empowered to engage in this blatant act of hypocrisy and corruption. We're going to play this clip and unpack it together. The audio that you're going to hear on this clip is Mike Johnson talking to reporters.
Speaker Mike Johnson told reporters he is strongly against the House Ethics Committee releasing its report on the investigation into accusations Matt Gaetz engaged in sexual misconduct and illicit drug use, which he denies.
I think it's a terrible breach of protocol and tradition and the spirit of the rule. The rules of the House have always been that a former member is beyond the jurisdiction of the Ethics Committee, and so I don't think that's relevant.
Will you respect if the Ethics Committee opts to give it to the Judiciary Committee?
I'm going to strongly request the Ethics Committee not issue the report, because that is not the way we do things in the House, and I think that would be a terrible precedent.
Are you going to try to stop it from coming out?
I'm going to request that it not be.
So, just to confirm, that is the Republican speaker saying because Matt Gaetz resigned from Congress, the investigation should not only end, that report should never be publicly released. And if the Senate Judiciary Committee requests the report, he doesn't think that the House Ethics Committee should comply and share the report or its findings with the Senate Judiciary Committee. Think about that, folks. A co-equal, coordinate branch, a coordinate chamber of the same branch, to be precise, also led by Republicans, wants the details of the report. At least they say they do. And Mike Johnson's like, nah, you don't need it. How disgustingly hypocritical and shameless. Their shamelessness is their superpower. Imagine how Mike Johnson would feel and what Mike Johnson would say if the shoe was on the other foot. Imagine it were President Biden or President Harris, and it had been a Democratic nominee for the position of Attorney General. Would Mike Johnson be satisfied if a Democratic congressional leader, the Senate leader, or, the Speaker of the House offered this excuse? No, of course not. He would be furious. But because it's his guy, because it's his party, Mike Johnson doesn't care. And he's eager to flout the rules for Republican benefit. This comes on the heels, by the way, of Jim Jordan, one of Mike Johnson's loyal lackeys in the House of Representatives, effectively saying the same thing last night on Fox News to Laura Ingraham, wanting to bury the report.
And Congressman Jordan, do you have any sense about what will happen with that House ethics report that was supposed to come out Friday? Remember, Gaetz had been accused of things and no prosecution had been continued. It had been dropped. But Dick Durbin's trying to get his hands on that report, obviously, to leak it out to hurt President Trump. What is your sense on that?
Well, it's my understanding that is not supposed to go public. So if it's not supposed to under the rules, it shouldn't go public. And what I know about Matt Gaetz is one of the best members we had on our committee. In my time in Congress, which has been a while, I don't know, there are very few people who have the cross-examination skills he does. And I want someone in the Justice Department who's not going to say mom's in.
So again, because it's their guy, Jim Jordan wants the report silenced. Now, according to reporting, even though Gaetz has resigned from Congress, the House Ethics Committee could still vote to release the report, that's not expressly forbidden by the rules at all. And actually, today, the time of recording, the bipartisan ethics committee was supposed to meet to discuss that very issue, and that was planned in advance when they would release the final report. But as I mentioned in a previous video, Republicans actually canceled the meeting for today. The Hill reported on this as well. House Ethics Committee meeting canceled amid firestorm over Gaetz report. Let's go into more detail. The House Ethics Committee has canceled its meeting set for Friday morning, two sources confirmed to The Hill, as the panel faces increased pressure to release its report into former Representative Matt Gaetz. Gaetz, who's been under investigation by the panel for roughly 3 years, resigned from Congress on Wednesday immediately following his nomination by Trump to serve as Attorney General. Before Gaetz' nomination, the committee, known for operating in secrecy, had scheduled a Friday meeting to vote on whether to release its long-awaited report into the Florida Republican. Punchbowl News first reported on the meeting, which a source familiar confirmed to The Hill. On Tuesday evening, the source said the group was still slated to meet. But Thursday night, the source said plans to meet had been canceled. Republicans on the panel did, however, huddle among themselves that evening, the source said. CNN first reported on the development. It remains unclear why the Friday meeting was scrapped and if the panel will gather the House when the House returns to Washington next week. A spokesperson for the Ethics Committee declined to comment. It's very fluid, one of the sources said of the situation. So it seems pretty obvious here. Donald Trump, their cult leader, picked a wildly contentious, unqualified candidate to be the nation's chief law enforcement officer. And in a more good faith environment, they would have told Donald Trump, hey, listen, Mr. President, this is not going to be it. You need to pick somebody else that we can get behind. But instead, because they're cowards and cultists, they're doing everything in their power to facilitate, at least the MAGA Republicans like Mike Johnson, they're doing everything in their power to facilitate and fast track Gaetz's confirmation to Attorney General. And so not only is Johnson saying, hey, this report shouldn't publicly be released, but he's also saying we can't share it. We shouldn't share it with the Senate Judiciary Committee. So if you don't want to release the public finding, I would argue that's still pretty bad, but I suppose there's a logic behind it, right? Because Gaetz is no longer a member of Congress. But he's up for position of Attorney General. And not only would I argue there's still a public interest in knowing what that report says, the Senate Judiciary Committee, at a bare minimum, should be given access to the details. And Mike Johnson wants to block that as well. That suggests that what's going on is really nefarious and potentially crippling for Gaetz's, potential confirmation. I mean, imagine that in 2024, with all the scandals surrounding Trump and MAGA Republicans, how bad something has to be for Johnson to so inappropriately try to pressure the House Ethics Committee into not releasing this report. And again, knowing that if the shoe was on the other foot, he would be grabbing a pitchfork and would be apoplectic and would be demanding that Democrats and a Democratic speaker and a Democratic candidate for Attorney General under a Democratic president comply and provide full transparency. But because it's Trump, because it's MAGA, because it's Gaetz, they're going to move heaven and earth to make this as corrupt and opaque as humanly possible. And folks, as corrupt and egregious and pathetic and hypocritical as this is, remember, Republicans have not yet taken Senate majority. I mean, they already have it. They will have it, but it's still a Democratic-controlled Senate as of this moment, and there's still a Democratic president. They feel this emboldened to be this egregiously corrupt now. How are they going to be when Trump does assume office? Republicans do assume the Senate majority, and the House is once again reestablished under Republican control. How bad will it get if it's already this bad? Food for thought. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.